Hello, everyone. It is Tony time, my Broadway fans. It's just days away from Broadway's biggest celebration, 2023 Tony Awards. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and here with me is my good friend David Buchanan to try and make sense of what's happening in these musical races. And Some Like It Hot has had a great time in the run-ups to these awards. They've claimed a lot of these other theater awards in New York. And has that moved your needle at all, David? Where do you stand on the best musical race?
It hasn't moved my needle much. I mean, when I sat down and updated all my picks today, I've got a really tight race with Kimberly and Some Like It Hot in terms of what show is going to take home the most trophies. I think they're really neck and neck. I'm still sticking with Kimberly Akimbo for best musical. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if Some Like It Hot won, because I do think it's going to do well in a bunch of other categories, but I do feel pretty confident about Kimberly. How do you feel about the two?
I've had Kimberly Akimbo out front the whole time. There have been a couple moments where I considered maybe Some Like It Hot overtaking it, but I'm still with Kimberly Akimbo. I just think it is something unique and special that people are really resonating with this season, and important to note for things like the Outer Critics Circle, Drama League, Drama Desk. It wasn't eligible for uh, most of those awards because it had competed for its off-Broadway run. So it's going to be a similar situation, I think, to like the band's visit, which was absent for a lot of these early smaller awards and then comes in and takes everything. I do think there's been like a lot of, you know, great campaigning from Some Like It Hot and Shucked. I will say Shucked has really, we'll probably talk about in a few other categories. I don't think it's quite strong enough to win Best Musical, but people really enjoy it. They really enjoy and Juliet as well. Um, but I think it is firmly between Kimberly Akimbo and Some Like It Hot. And I just think that once you see the weak point maybe of Kimberly Akimbo is that it's hard to describe to people who haven't seen it. But once you do see it, it's one of those things where you just have to tell everyone about it and say, you've got to see this show. So I'm sticking with Kimberly Akimbo as my prediction. I feel pretty good about it. What I don't feel great about, though, is the revival of a musical race. Both revival races actually this season are nuts. Revival of a musical, we have Into the Woods, Sweeney Todd, Camelot, and Parade. All have really great things going for them. And I feel like I'm gonna, sorry, Lincoln Center Theater, but I am gonna like remove Camelot from my possibilities, I think. But
Yeah.
I could see Into the Woods, Sweeney Todd, or Parade, any of those taking it. And I've gone back and forth a few times. Where have you landed on this?
Me too. I read the race the same way. What's really funny about it, and I'm having a really hard time with it, is I only have at most right now in my tally, I have at most one of those productions winning one, like Parade winning one, Sweeney winning one, maybe two. Like
Sure.
there's not one of these shows that I think is going to do well across the board that indicates it's going to have enough support. So that's what makes it so challenging. So at the moment, I have Parade out front. I'm playing with Parade in other important categories that we'll get to, but I have Parade out front. I think, you know what? I've often really wanted to put Sweeney there because I think, the grandeur of that production, the full orchestra, the casting. I think Annaleigh Ashford, is maybe not going to win, but is a very strong contender for actress. It's going to win, I think, one, design category, maybe more. So, and then Into the Woods, as you've said many times, Sam, just like such an event at the beginning of this season. Everybody saw it multiple times with the different casts. It's really like beloved this season amongst the community. So that's why this is so hard. But I think, for me, Parade, it's got the reviews. It's got acclaim. It's incredibly topical. It has a really important message at this moment in time. So that is kind of pushing it just a little bit over the edge for me. How about you?
Yeah, that's why I've had Parade out front recently, is just because I think all three of these shows are three of the biggest, shows of this season, and that's what makes this so tough. Because people really don't have anything bad to say about them. And Parade just seems to speak to this moment in a really poignant way, on top of being an already great production. It's, even just like down to things like they have projections of the real life figures of this story, a story that many people discover for the first time when they see the show. It's not one that, Leo Frank is not a story that's super well known. But as we deal with like, all of these like fascist groups that are popping up all over our country, this musical and this story feel even more important and more urgent right now. And it's put together by some of the most beloved people in the industry, I think. So that's why I've had it out front, and I feel pretty good about that, except I really think this is going to be one of the closest votes. I've started the season with Sweeney Todd out front, and I moved that down to third. Like, just because it's going to be so close, and I'm this close from putting Into the Woods in first place, because despite the grandeur and epicness of Sweeney, which is my favorite musical, and I still have it in third, and despite the like urgency of Parade, I am still hearing people just lavish praise on Into the Woods, and it's still popping up in places. Like, it won a surprise sound design award at the Drama Desk recently. Lear de Bessonet won director with Drama League, right? It's like, even though it is a very like standard kind of concert presentation of this musical, people love this show. And it's a scenario where it's not going to be, because I don't see it winning acting awards. I'm not sure it can win those. And it could be a situation where it doesn't win anything all night and then it swoops in to win revival of a musical. So I'm still going with Parade. It just seems like it seems like the zeitgeist is kind of pushing towards Parade a little bit, but it's only ahead by this much, and I may switch to Into the Woods by the end of the season here, which is just in a few days. I'll probably switch back and forth several more times.
Yeah.
I have also, if we look towards best score and best book of a musical, I'm starting to doubt, even though I still think Kimberly Akimbo is very strongly the best musical frontrunner, I'm not so sure it takes both of these anymore. I'm having doubts. I do think it's very out front to win score. It's again competing with Some Like It Hot there. And they've been pushing Some Like It Hot score a lot and getting it on social media a lot. And it's catchy and it's toe tappy. Maybe you could argue even catchier than a lot of songs in Kimberly Akimbo. But I think Kimberly has score. Do you see it another way?
No, I think Kimberly has score. I totally agree.
And I was thinking that it would pair that with book, but maybe David Lindsay Bear will have to just be happy with the score, because I keep hearing a lot more different opinions about score. Like, I feel like most of these contenders have support. Robert Horn has picked up an award recently for Shucked. I think Anne Juliet, a lot of people admire the way that David West Reed had to like compile all of those songs. They're all Max Martin songs, but they're from different artists, so it's tonally very different. He had to make them all fit on one tone, and there's a lot of ways I think this could go. And suddenly I think Kimberly is not so safe for Book of a Musical.
Yeah, I, for the longest time, actually had Some Like It Hot for book. I think just because it feels like, just as strong a contender for best musical. And I thought maybe there would be a split there. But you know what? Robert Horn has won this award in this category before for a very joke forward, joke heavy.
That's the
book.
thing. It's very obvious. Like, it's very obvious work.
So
he could go 2 for 2.
Yeah, I feel like so I'm not confident in Kimberly. I have Kimberly out front right now, just because I think, going back to how I felt earlier in the season, And as you said, these more recent awards where Kimberly hasn't been eligible, maybe makes it feel like the momentum is moving a bit. But I just felt like Kimberly is going to have such a good night, and I'm not sold on what other book I would put over it. So that's why I'm sticking with it for now. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of the two that you mentioned. It's possible.
Yeah, I don't. At the beginning of the season, I thought Some Like It Hot could do it for Amber Ruffin. But I don't. I've moved that down to fourth. Actually, I feel like Robert Horn has really emerged as the biggest threat, and maybe David West Reed is there as a kind of dark horse contender. But I think it's also because Shucked has really become this kind of like endearing show that people just really are falling in love with, and it's taken them a little bit of time, I think, for everyone to discover it and fall in love with it. But people are just going and having such a great time, and I don't think it's going to win Best Musical, but I feel like voters are definitely going to want to give it something. It's kind of like the situation with Six last time, where it was like Strange Loop's clearly winning Best Musical, but like, what is Six going to win because people are loving it? Ended up stealing Best Score. And I think Shucked could be in that situation where it only has like I think a potential to win a couple awards, and this is one of the few options they have to give it a win. So I'm really close, just like Into the Woods and Revival. I'm really close to putting Shucked there. I don't know if I can pull the trigger or not yet. Um, I'm also still waffling on Best Director
Me
of
too.
a musical because Kimberly Akimbo, usually the Best Musical frontrunner, can pretty easily take Director of a musical as well, but surprises happen here. Um, and right now I have Michael Arden out front for Parade, because I also think Parade has to get something. And even if I switched Into the Woods for Revival, I do think this is like a really strong point for Parade. What do you have out front here?
I have Kimberly right now, but I have Parade in second, and I want to change. That's the one category on our list for musicals that I circled as like I need to leave this conversation with more clarity than I have now, because I feel like, especially if I'm predicting Parade for Revival, I don't have it winning anything else at all. And this is where
Same, actually, same.
this
Yeah.
is where I feel like, you know what? If they love the production, they love, everything about it collectively, maybe not enough for it to win. I know it has some nominations in some of the design categories. It may not be strong enough to overcome some of the other frontrunners there, but I just feel like Michael Arden could do it. And he's so well respected. I mean, this is not his first production that's nominated for Best Revival. His productions have won Best Revival. So it'll be interesting, if it can just push past Kimberly. I'm not 100%, but that's a change I am really tempted to make like right now.
Yeah, it just also seems like Michael is in that position of like, maybe it's finally time, is
Yeah.
kind of what
Yeah.
people will think, because he's had a long career here. He started as an actor, he's moved more into directing, and he's been nominated before
Yep.
for really, all of his stuff is really inventive and different. He comes to everything with a very like striking concept, from like the Spring Awakening revival, the Once on This Island revival, A Christmas Carol just this season. He has this great body of work already in such a short time. Uh, and I think this might be his, like, finally his best shot to actually win, because he's always had something that's been up against another really strong contender. Whereas Jessica Stone for Kimberly Akimbo, it's I don't know. It's, she works great with the material, but it is a more intimate piece. It's like very purposefully intimate, but I'm just wondering, are they going to give that director or not? Of course, Lear de Bessonet just won Drama League for Into the Woods, so maybe they'll do something crazy and give it to her, because they do like Into the Woods that much. But for right now, I think I'm gonna stick with Parade, because I feel like it needs, with musical revival so up in the air, I feel like it needs a definitive win somewhere, and this feels like kind of the best spot to do it.
Yeah, I agree. If you switch to Into the Woods, will you still stick with Parade for director?
Uh, yeah, I think Into the Woods can win revival without winning anything else
Yeah,
potentially.
yeah.
Um, we'll get to one category where I do think it has the chance to pull off a really shocking upset,
Mm,
but I think it is one of those shows like Michael Arden's Once on This Island, which won
yeah,
revival,
yeah,
nothing else.
yeah.
There's plenty of shows. Hair won revival, nothing else. That's definite history of that happening, and I think Into the Woods is one of those
Yeah.
shows that definitely has the potential to do it. But for right now, I'm sticking with Michael Arden, unless I switch to Kimberly Akimbo. Let's move on. We got to keep this moving here. So let's look to choreography, which I think has two different. The way I see it, it's probably Casey Nicola versus Susan Stroman.
Yep.
I don't know. I think Jennifer Weber has two great shows in contention. I think they're probably gonna, knock each other out. Do you see anyone else winning?
Not really. Those are my top two. I mean, I was tempted at one point, like, Sweeney getting in was a surprise. I mean,
Though
people,
I did call it in our
yeah,
past video.
people
I
do
will
love
say.
people do love that, like the movement. I mean, it's so evocative and it works so well in this production. I was tempted to put that higher up in my predictions than I have it now, just in case, like, if it wins
I don't think it's
revival.
enough choreography
Yeah,
for a win, though.
exactly. Yeah,
Stephen Hoggett did amazing work on it. It
yeah,
is really evocative, like memorable movement, but I don't think it's quite
yeah.
enough of it to win.
So yeah, so I have my top two are Some Like It Hot and New York, New York. And I'm going with Some Like It Hot based in part on, there's a great sequence in it that really stands out as a moment from the season. And also just on the strength of the show, like we know it's going to win, a couple of other categories. So I feel like that's an award that it is out front to win.
Yeah, I think I just think the tap it's kind of their like dueling tap dance
Yeah,
numbers as
true.
like their big moments.
Yeah.
New York, New York has the one that they stage it on this skyscraper set, like beams that fly into the stage, which is very impressive. And then Some Like It Hot has, I don't even know how long the number is, but
Yeah.
it is this crazy tap dance chase scene with the mobsters chasing everyone through the hotel. Slam doors, mixed up identities, comedy ensues. And I think that will be what clinches it for Casey.
Yeah.
And it feels like he's become kind of like the king of that high energy showstopper
Yeah.
choreography, but he hasn't won in a while. And I think he'll finally get another one this year.
Yeah.
Um, I also really need your help with orchestrations because this is my worst category every single Tonys. We don't have a
Yeah.
lot of like historical precedent for orchestrations.
True.
It hasn't been around for that long to have a lot of like data to work with of how they vote. And it also is voted on by a smaller subset of the Tony pool. I have tried many times to figure out what they're looking for, what's going to make them choose something, but I seem to pick the wrong one all the time here. What are you picking, David? Lead us.
I'm picking Some Like It Hot. I don't know if that helps you because you're probably picking the same. No, do you have something
I
else?
have that in second place, actually. I have
Okay, what are you
Juliet.
picking? Okay, that makes sense. I could
Um,
see it being either of those. So that's not very helpful, but I feel like, well, why are you picking Anne Juliet? Because I feel like Some Like It Hot is probably in the prediction center as the front runner. So why are you deviating from that? What makes you think Anne Juliet?
Anne Juliet feels like, like if you're looking for a narrative for a win there,
Mm,
it feels
mm,
sort of similar to something like Moulin Rouge,
mm.
which won orchestrations, in that it's a jukebox musical with wildly disparate
Yeah,
music that it's pulling from. Kelly Clarkson, NSYNC, Celine Dion,
yeah,
Adam Lambert, Pink, all of these, they have a core writer that's the same, but the styles are all very different.
mm,
And the songs have been like edited and cut and orchestrated in a way that makes them all of one universe. And many of them are like totally new reinventions of the work. Like Hit Me Baby One More Time is Juliet like contemplating her life as she's like, am I gonna kill myself, to be with Romeo, and she doesn't, and it's a totally different number. So whereas, our original musicals this year, the two front runners like Kimberly Akimbo and Some Like It Hot are really shining through their scores, this is where And Juliet really resonates, is in the reorchestration of these songs.
Yeah,
So
and
that's why I have it there. It's a huge job, I think.
yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I honestly, the last few Tony ceremonies feel like a blur in terms of time, but I'm pretty sure Girl from the North Country was last year, right? Wasn't that last ceremony?
Yeah,
And they
right.
won,
Years
and
don't
they
mean anything to
no,
me anymore. So
me
I
either.
do know Girl from the North Country won.
It won Orchestrations. I'm pretty sure it was last year that it won. And that feels like a similar, I mean, obviously that is a catalog by one songwriter. So it's not as big a task as you're describing, but making all these different pieces that didn't once belong together into a cohesive narrative, that's a compelling argument. I was, kind of defaulting to Some Like It Hot just because it's that kind of lush, full period, sound. But I like, that's, to me, it's a default rather than having a, compelling kind of argument as to why. So I think you're persuading me as to, why And Juliet may be out front.
I definitely think Some Like It Hot is in it.
Yeah.
And it has, I think, won a couple trophies on its way to the Tonys.
Yeah.
Because it might, is that true? It might have the biggest orchestra. I actually don't know how big the orchestra for New York is. That could be bigger. But Some Like It Hot has a 17-piece orchestra. It is a really lush, big band, brassy, MGM musical sound, which is very appealing to people. It's like what you think of when you think musical theater orchestrations, right? It's a really full sound. So I do think it's between those shows, unless of course they do something that I'm not thinking of, which they do all the time in this category. They could just check off Kimberly Akimbo, which is very effective, with a very small orchestra.
Yeah.
I think it's under 10 pieces if I recall correctly, but it is designed really well to play to that small size. So who knows what will happen, but I think I'm just sticking with And Juliet for right now, because I feel like in sort of the same way where when actors play a real life person, it gives voters like a comparison, something to judge them against. And Juliet, the orchestrations are like, we can judge them against the original pop songs and see how wildly different they've taken these songs. But we don't know what the small group of voters will think. So they could just really say, no, we want the really lush musical theater sound, and Some Like It Hot takes it. I think it's kind of a toss up.
Kind of like that Oklahoma year that still has me, ruining my choice, right? Like totally reinvented that classic score, but they didn't, care for it.
Yeah.
Or they cared for Hadestown more, I should say. Not that they didn't care for it.
Yeah, so listen to us and then do your own thing in this category, and don't send us nasty messages when we got it wrong and you followed our instructions. Let's dive in. Design categories are not talked about that often, but there's, I think, some good races in here. Do you see this as a year where one show is kind of the dominant design contender?
I'm looking right now. I have 4 different shows in the 4 categories.
I do too.
Yeah. So no, how exciting is that too? That's really exciting.
For sound design, I have And Juliet pairing with my orchestration prediction. I think And Juliet will take that as well. It's the same sound designer for MJ, which won last year. And it is just like a full rock concert sound. Though I do think this is the category where Into the Woods could pull off. I've actually heard people like say that like they think they're going to vote for it here. Which is kind of crazy because Into the Woods is just a concert production, but it is about making it sound as glorious as possible, this classic Sondheim score. So this could be a place where they just check it off because they really love Into the Woods, and it
Yeah.
only has a few places where it could win. But I do think and Juliet will take that. And then I have Sweeney taking lighting,
Yep, me
Some
too.
Like It Hot taking costumes,
Me
and
too.
New York with scenic design. Do you
Me
have anything
too.
else?
No, those are my four. I mean, you're compelling on the sound design for Into the Woods because that orchestra is a star of that production. I mean, they're front and center. So I really like that. It's tempting, but those are my four right now. I feel pretty confident about at least three of the four, which is crazy to
I
say because there's always surprises in these categories, but I feel like
yeah,
we'll do pretty well with those.
I feel like I've narrowed it to two in each one.
Yeah.
Like I think there is a chance that Some Like It Hot could take scenic design for Scott Pask. There's like a lot of great Art Deco elements in there.
Yep.
But there's just so like New York just has like an overwhelming amount of sets
Totally.
that are
Totally.
flying around all the time. I could see Anne Juliet taking costume design. I don't think there's like a definitive costume design winner this year. So
Yeah.
I think Anne Juliet has a lot of really like fun, inventive costumes that would kind of remind me, the style kind of reminds me of Six's win
Yeah.
here. So
Exactly.
that could happen. But Some Like It Hot feels like the more standard classic contender here. And then lighting design is the one I'm going back and forth. Natasha Katz is the Sweeney lighting designer. It's super evocative and
Oh,
creepy. She,
yeah.
there's these like top down lights. I don't know terms for different lights, so sue me, but it makes it seem like you're like down in this subterranean cavern with them. But then New York has a moment of lighting, like when Manhattan Henge comes out.
Yeah.
And so, I talk a lot about how like voters just like remember certain moments, and Manhattan Henge in New York is a moment that's just like lighting design, screams lighting design. So that could be New York could end up taking lighting from Sweeney, I think.
Yeah, I could see that. I feel pretty good about Sweeney though. I think as you're saying, it's so evocative. They've got that beautiful arch that they use different color in. They've got the great moment with My Friends where, we do get to see the razors glisten, which is, a lovely
Yeah.
touch. So you know what? I feel okay about it. And I do feel like, as I said, if I'm not predicting Sweeney for revival, that is the only award that I have it winning.
Wow.
And it's the most
Actually, that
yeah, and it's the
same
most
here.
nominated musical revival of the season, I'm pretty sure. So, and that's the only category I have it winning right now.
Well, then let's jump into acting categories because Annalie Ashford just won the
Yeah,
Drama League
yeah,
Distinguished Performance category, which they only give out one acting trophy for their entire. Not that there's crossover for Tony voters, but it is still nevertheless impressive to be the only actor out of like their 45 nominees to win. Do you think she can beat Victoria Clark?
possibly. I don't know if it's probable. I think it's possible. I think she's incredible in the role, and it's really like it's a reinterpretation. It's not it doesn't pale in comparison to Angela Lansbury because she's not doing Angela Lansbury. It's her own thing. She's really wonderful in it, and she has been dominating, as you said, because Kimberly hasn't been eligible. She's been picking up a
She has a
lot of
lot of
awards.
momentum. Yeah.
So that is really, that is really working in her favor. I just don't know if you're voting for Kimberly Akimbo for best musical and best score and maybe best director. I don't know if you're not voting for Victoria Clark. That's my hesitation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I love Annalie Ashford. Like I wish there was
Yeah,
a place for both her and
I
Victoria Clark
know.
to win. Maybe there'll be a tie for somewhere, but I do think there is a lot of support for both women in
Yeah.
the industry. So I think it's probably closer than we're thinking.
Mm,
But I have to give the edge to Victoria Clark just
yeah.
because there's such an obvious feat of acting on stage with her
Hmm.
playing this 16-year-old and not coming off like a baby, or like a little kid. It's a really thoughtful performance. It's a physical transformation, and she makes you cry at the end. And so I don't know that. I think maybe Sweeney Todd, even though people love it, it doesn't hit like the emotional like gut punch maybe that
Yeah.
Kimberly has. And I think that's why I feel
Yeah.
that it's slightly towards Victoria Clark there.
I agree. And
Um,
if she was eligible for these awards because it hadn't, debuted off Broadway earlier, I think we'd be having maybe a different conversation. Like if Annalie didn't have the momentum without Victoria there, it might look a bit more clear.
mhm.
But yeah, I think you're right. I do think it's a two-way race. I'm not 100% sold on Victoria, but I'm mostly sold on Victoria. Mostly sold on
Yeah.
Victoria Clark.
And Kimberly Akimbo is not, it doesn't have a contender for lead actor. So who do you have up front for that race?
Let me just make sure I know who I have. Oh yeah, I've had Jay Harrison Gee all season, and that's where I'm
Yeah,
staying.
I think Ben Platt is putting up a real fight, and I think
Mm,
Josh Groban has some supporters too.
yeah,
Um, but I honestly think I don't think there's enough people united behind one person
yeah,
to take down what is like a true star-making moment from J. Harrison G. Because like I even know people who really are loving Colton Ryan,
mm,
who are loving Brian Darcy James,
yeah,
and so I think the most likely person to steal this would be Ben Platt if
mm,
there's going to be an upset. But I mean, the moment I saw Jay sing, "You could have knocked me over with a feather," I was like,
yeah,
"That's the Tony moment.
yeah.
That's it. That's Jokina Kalukango uh, getting a standing O for her song. Um, that felt like one of the defining moments of the season to me. So I think he pretty easily takes this one.
I do too. I think it helps that the field, like you said, is so strong and support could go so many ways that there's not one kind of alternative.
Yeah. Um, I don't quite feel the same way with featured actor in a musical.
Yeah,
I think there are two people who are very far out front,
yeah,
which is Justin Cooley and Alex Newell.
yeah,
And I leading with this desire to have Shucked win something, which I think is very real because people are really, falling for this musical. I've had Justin out front the entire time, and I've recently switched to Alex Newell, who also gets one of the most talked about numbers of the
yeah.
season, I think. Um, do you see anyone else as a possibility in there?
Those are my two. I have Alex as well. I think independently owned. They've done such a good job of making that the anthem of the show. And
Mm-hmm.
and even for folks who haven't seen the show or maybe, don't go to Broadway that often, like I feel like that number has really kind of made its way through. Um, I think people are just aware of it, and that performance is truly spectacular. I could see Justin though, as you said, I've had Justin all season long as well. I feel like if there's a groundswell for Kimberly Akimbo, you made a comparison earlier to Band's Visit, which I think is apt because, some people were predicting Ariel Stachel in this category for his one standout. He's great throughout the show, but
Mm-hmm.
that one standout moment. This could be something too, where it takes lead actress, featured actor, maybe featured actress. We'll talk about that in a second. But it could take 3 acting prizes. So I'm not writing Justin off, but I do feel like there's a kind of, like you said, a zeitgeisty thing happening with Alex's performance.
Yeah, it feels very of the moment. Like they've done a great job broadcasting it out, so it's like the song has already become
Yep.
well known beyond just
Yeah.
Broadway circles. They're getting standing O's every night. Um, and what's crazy too is if Alex wins this category and Jay wins lead, they are both the first two non-binary performers nominated in either of these
Yeah.
categories. And so it could not only be the first two nominees, but there's the potential for two non-binary winners. this season, which is really crazy to
Incredible.
think about, going
Yeah.
from 0 to 2 in one season. But I do think it's a pretty close battle between Alex and
Yeah.
Justin. I think that will be very close, just because Justin is, again, as you said, Kimberly is very popular, and he has it's a really like robust role. There's a lot more
Yeah.
to it. I think I think in off-Broadway land, now I'm forgetting, but one of the off-Broadway awards even put him in lead as opposed
Right.
to their featured category. So this will be very close between Alex and Justin. Get an acceptance speech ready, both of you. One of you is probably going to take it. And finally, let's move to featured actress in the musical. I've had Bonnie Milligan out here the whole time. I think Betsy Wolfe is a pretty significant challenger to her.
Mhm.
And I've also felt a lot of goodwill toward Natasha Yvette Williams for Some
Yeah.
Like It Hot. I don't know if it's enough for her to win, but I think she's making the race a lot closer than I originally thought when the season started.
Yeah.
Who's out front for you?
I'm trying not to overthink too many categories, so I'm gonna stick
Oh, we
with
love overthinking categories.
we do. That's why we do these videos. But I'm gonna stick with Bonnie. I feel like this is her season. This is the role. She's made her impression in other musicals before too. She's not unknown to the community, and then this is just such a breakout, moment for her. I feel pretty confident that it's Bonnie.
Yeah. And what made me even more confident is I went back to see Kimberly a second time, and I was just like, oh, you've even gotten funnier somehow, even though I know all I know
Yeah.
what every like punchline is that you're going to say, and you've somehow even made it like more moving and more funny. It's a really phenomenal job, and she gets a big like showcase number with Better, which is like
Yeah.
probably the biggest showstopper of that musical. So I think Bonnie has it. I won't be surprised if someone else, is able to pull ahead, because again, like Betsy Wolfe just destroys this Celine Dion song. Amazing vocals on it, and Natasha Williams is incredibly funny, and steals each scene she's in Some Like It Hot. But it does sort of feel like this is like Bonnie's moment being created a little bit.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, if you're watching out there and if you think you can do better, if you've been shouting at your screen saying, what have you done? What are you thinking? How could you? You're wrong. Go into the prediction center, fill out your predictions before the Tonys on June 11th, and see if you can score better than David and I. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Sam.